Cole had seen better days. He stood in the back of the auction hall on Station Vega 12, his worn jacket marking him as exactly what he was, a salvage operator with more debts than credits. The hall was packed with aliens of every shape and size. Tall creatures stood next to short, furry merchants. Floating jellyfish beings drifted above the crowd. And somewhere in the middle of it all, one human watched and waited. The auction had been going on for hours. Ship after ship sold for thousands, sometimes millions of credits, had no business being here. His account held barely 500 credits, enough to buy fuel for maybe 2 more trips. After that, he would be done. Finished. Another human who tried to make it in the galaxy and failed. He was about to leave when the auctioneer, a four-armed with gray skin and nervous eyes, announced the next item. Lot number 477, they said. His voice carried through the hall, but something was different now. He sounded uncomfortable. One vessel, origin unknown, species unknown, condition listed as non-functional, sold as is, no returns, no guarantees. A holographic image appeared above the stage. The ship was unlike anything had ever seen. It was not large, maybe twice the size of his own cargo hauler, but its design was strange. The hull seemed to flow like frozen water. There were no visible engines, no weapon ports, no markings of any kind. It looked ancient and alien in a way that made the other alien ships seem normal. Notice something strange. The crowd had gone quiet, not the excited quiet of people waiting to bid. This was different. The aliens were backing away from the hologram like it might bite them. A group of soldiers near the front actually left the hall entirely. Starting bid, the auctioneer said, and heard a slight shake in his voice. 1,000 credits. Silence. 800 credits. Nothing, not a single raised hand or tentacle or claw. 500 credits. Surely someone will take this vessel for 500 credits. The silence continued. Looked around in confusion. These were merchants and collectors who had just spent fortunes on broken-down warships and damaged cargo haulers. Why would they avoid this one? 200 credits, the auctioneer said, almost pleading now. The Galactic Reclamation Authority simply needs to remove this item from inventory. Did not know why he raised his hand. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the strange feeling in his chest that told him this moment mattered. 300 credits, he called out. Every eye in the room turned to look at him. The expressions on the alien faces varied. Some showed pity, others showed fear. A few showed something that looked almost like horror. The auctioneer stared at him for a long moment. Sold, he finally said, to the human. Paid with half of everything he had left. The dock workers who led him to the ship refused to get within 10 meters of it. They pointed at a berth in the far corner of the station, gave him and practically ran away. He found the ship waiting in the darkness of the empty dock. Up close, it was even stranger than the hologram had shown. The hull material was like nothing he could identify. Not metal, not polymer, not organic, something else entirely, something that seemed to shift slightly when he was not looking directly at it. The entry ramp was already down, which was odd because the ship was supposedly non-functional. Walked up slowly, his boots making no sound on the strange surface. Inside, the ship was dark. The walls curved in ways that hurt his eyes if he looked too long. There were no visible controls, no screens, no buttons, just smooth surfaces that seemed to breathe in the dim light. "Hello," called out. His voice did not echo. The walls seemed to absorb the sound. He moved deeper into the ship, running his hand along the wall to guide himself. The material was warm, almost body temperature, and smooth in a way that felt wrong, like touching something alive. His hand slipped on a sharp edge he had not seen. Pain flared across his palm, and he jerked back with a curse. Blood dripped from the cut, falling onto the console below. The moment his blood touched the surface, everything changed. Light exploded through the ship. Not harsh electric light, but something softer, warmer, like sunlight through clouds. The walls shifted color from gray to a deep blue. Patterns appeared on every surface, flowing like rivers of gold. Stumbled backward, his heart pounding. The ship was waking up. He could feel it in his bones, in his teeth, in some part of his mind he did not know existed. A hologram appeared in front of him. Not a pre-recorded message, but something that seemed to look directly at him to see him. It was a figure of light shaped like nothing he recognized. Not human. Not like any alien he had ever seen. Something older. Something that existed before the current galaxy took shape. And then a voice spoke directly into his mind. Not through his ears, but inside his thoughts, in perfect English that somehow carried emotions and meanings beyond words. Seedling vessel activated. Genetic pattern recognized. Compatibility confirmed. Tried to speak, but his voice would not work. Welcome, inheritor. You have been chosen. The time of waiting is over. The hologram faded, but the ship remained alive around him. Screens appeared where there had been blank walls. Controls grew from surfaces like flowers blooming. A pilot's chair rose from the floor, shaped perfectly for a human body. Stood there, bleeding hand forgotten, staring at the impossible ship that now belonged to him. He did not understand what had just happened. He did not know what inheritor meant or why his blood had activated something that had been dead for what might have been millions of years. But he understood one thing with perfect clarity. The aliens in that auction hall had known something about this ship. They had feared it, and now that fear made a terrible kind of sense. Whatever this vessel was, whatever it meant, Cole had just stumbled into something far bigger than a simple salvage operation. The galaxy had secrets buried in its bones, and he had just found one of them. His hand finally stopped bleeding. The ship hummed around him, waiting. Outside, the cold stars burned in the endless dark. Sat down in the chair that fit him like it had been built for him. Because, he realized with a chill running down his spine, it probably had been. Okay, he whispered to the ship, to himself, to whatever was listening. Show me what you are. The ship responded with a sound like distant singing, and Cole's life changed forever. Flew the ship for 3 days before he trusted himself to show it to anyone else. The controls responded to his thoughts as much as his hands. The navigation system showed him star maps that included places no human had ever been. The engines made no sound and used no fuel he could identify. He named the ship the Wanderer because that was what he had always been. A man without a home, drifting between stars, looking for something he could never name. When he finally docked at Prime, a dusty mining colony on the edge of human space, he went straight to the only person he trusted completely. Marsh ran a repair dock near the colony's main hub. She was short, sharp-eyed, and could fix anything that flew. They had grown up together in the same orbital station, back when they were both poor kids dreaming of the stars. Now she was one of the best mechanics in the sector, and she was the only person knew who would not ask too many questions. At least that was what he thought. What in the actual hell is this? Said, standing at the bottom of the Wanderer's entry ramp. Her tool bag hung forgotten at her side. Her mouth was open. I bought it at an auction, said, 300 credits. 300. Walked up the ramp slowly, like she was approaching a sleeping predator. This technology doesn't exist. This material doesn't exist. I've never seen anything like this in my entire life. I know. The hull is repairing itself. I can see it. There was a scratch here a minute ago and now it's gone. I know. Turned to look at him. Her eyes were wide but not with fear, with wonder. Show me everything. They spent 2 days inside the ship, ran every scan she could think of, and the results made no sense. The ship had no power source she could detect, but it clearly had power. The hull was stronger than any material in any database, but it weighed almost nothing. The computer systems operated on principles that seemed more like magic than technology. On the second night, While they were eating cold rations in what had started calling the cockpit, the ship spoke to them. Warning, hostile scan detected, Dominion frequency, distance, 4 light minutes and closing. Jumped to his feet. The Dominion was the most powerful coalition in the galaxy. 5 species working together, controlling most of known space. They had fought a war with humanity 60 years ago, a war that humanity had barely survived. Since then, humans had been confined to a small region of space, watched constantly, never allowed to expand. "How did they find us?" asked. "I do not know," was already running to the pilot's chair, "but we need to leave now." Through the cockpits, they saw it. A Dominion cruiser dropping out of faster-than-light travel right above the colony. It was massive, bristling with weapons, painted in the dark colors of the Dominion military. His hands flew over the controls. "Come on, come on." Grabbed his shoulder. "They're launching soldiers. They're landing at my dock." He looked at the screen. She was right. Troop carriers were descending toward the repair facility. Dozens of soldiers in combat armor, armed with weapons that could cut through steel. "We have to go. My home is there, everything I own." He grabbed her hand. "We stay, we die. Whatever this ship is, they want it, and they will kill anyone who gets in their way." She stared at him for one terrible moment. Then she nodded, her jaw tight with anger and grief. The Wanderer lifted off just as the first soldiers reached the dock. Energy blasts streaked past and pushed the ship higher, faster, trying to reach open space. "They're following," said, watching the scanner. "The cruiser is targeting us." Had seen Dominion weapons in action before. They could destroy small moons. His little ship should have been vapor in seconds. The first blast hit them dead center. Nothing happened. A shield had appeared around the Wanderer, a bubble of pale light that absorbed the energy weapon completely. The ship did not even shake. "What?" he whispered. Another blast, another perfect absorption. The shield seemed to grow stronger with each hit, like it was feeding on the attacks. And then the Wanderer did something impossible. Without any input without any calculated course, the ship jumped to faster-than-light speed. Stars stretched into lines around them. The Dominion cruiser vanished. One moment they were above Prime, and the next they were somewhere else entirely, surrounded by unfamiliar constellations. His hands were shaking. He had not done that. He had not even thought about doing that. The ship had saved them on its own. The holographic display activated. That same golden light, those same flowing patterns. And a new message, appearing in characters that somehow translated themselves directly into his mind. "Threat detected, preserving inheritor, emergency relocation complete." "What does that mean?" demanded. "What is an inheritor? Why did the Dominion attack us?" Shook his head. He had no answers, only more questions. But the message was not finished. Additional information available. The inheritor may wish to know. The conquered species have sought to prevent this activation for 2 million years. They must not reclaim what they buried. The inheritor must learn the truth. The conquered looked at, "What is the conquered?" "I think," said slowly, staring at the alien text, "I think it's what the Dominion used to be called, before they became what they are now." The ship hummed around them. Outside, strange stars burned in a sky no human had ever seen. They were lost, hunted, and completely alone. But they were alive, and somewhere in this ancient ship there were answers waiting. "We need to find someone who knows about this," said. "Someone who studies the old history, the stuff the Dominion doesn't want anyone to remember." Sat down heavily in the co-pilot's seat. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "I know someone, a historian. He lives in the Drift Nebula off every official map. If anyone knows what this ship is, he will." Nodded. He entered the coordinates she gave him, and the Wanderer responded instantly, setting a course through the dark. Behind them, somewhere across the light years, the Dominion was already searching. Overseer stood on the bridge of his cruiser, watching the empty space where the impossible ship had been. "Find them," he said to his crew. "Whatever it takes, find them before they learn what they are." The hunt had begun. The Drift Nebula was a cloud of gas and dust so thick that no sensors could see through it. Ships that entered without knowing the safe paths simply disappeared. It was the perfect place for someone who did not want to be found. Had lived there for 15 years. Guided the wanderer through the twisting corridors of clear space, following the route had programmed. She had met years ago when she was young and curious about the galaxy's mysteries. He had been strange then, she said, obsessed with things that no one else cared about. But he was brilliant, and more importantly, he was honest. They found his station floating in a pocket of calm space at the heart of the nebula. It was small and old, covered in sensor dishes and communication arrays pointing in every direction. A man who spent his life listening to the whispers of the universe. Met them at the airlock. He was older than expected, with gray hair and tired eyes. But those eyes sharpened the moment he saw the wanderer through the viewport. "My God," he breathed, "it's real. After all these years, it's actually real." They sat in his cramped living quarters, surrounded by screens and data pads and ancient books made of actual paper. Had made them tea, his hands shaking slightly as he poured. "I've spent my whole life studying the gaps," he said, "the holes in the official history, the things the Dominion doesn't want anyone to know. And this," he gestured at the ship visible through his window, "this is the biggest gap of all." "Tell us," "Tell us what it is." Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of terrible knowledge. Millions of years ago, before any current species existed, there was a civilization called the Architects. They were old when the stars we see now were young. They explored the galaxy, studied it, and eventually they began to seed it with life. He paused, letting that sink in. They didn't just observe evolution. They guided it, created it. The Dominion species, and the others, they were early experiments, successful ones, but the Architects weren't satisfied. They wanted to create something more, something better. Humans whispered. Nodded slowly. Humans were their final work, their masterpiece, if you will. The Architects designed your species to be inheritors, not of territory or wealth, but of potential. The ability to grow, to change, to connect with others in ways no other species could. They left humans on a small planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy, hidden from everyone else, and they waited. "Waited for what?" asked. "For you to develop naturally. To earn your inheritance through struggle and growth, not have it handed to you. The Architects knew that gifts given freely have no value. Only what is earned is truly kept." Stood and walked to a screen. He touched it and images appeared. Ancient ruins, strange symbols, ships that looked like the Wanderer buried on dead worlds. They left behind seed ships, vessels designed to activate only for human contact. Each one contains technology and knowledge beyond anything the galaxy has today. They were meant to be found when humanity was ready. But the Dominion found out, said. He was beginning to understand now. The fear in the auction hall, the attack on Prime, it all made terrible sense. Yes, the other Dominion species discovered the truth about 100,000 years ago. They found records of what humans were meant to become, and they were terrified. His voice grew harder. Think about it from their perspective. They had built empires. They controlled the galaxy. And then they learned that somewhere out there, a young species was growing, developing, designed by the Architects themselves to eventually surpass everyone else. What would you do? They decided to stop it, said quietly. They did more than that. They formed the Conquered, which later became the Dominion. They searched for Earth. For thousands of years, they hunted for the hidden world where humans were evolving. And when humanity finally developed space travel and made first contact. The war, said. The war 60 years ago, it wasn't about territory. No, it was about containment. The Dominion didn't want to destroy humanity. That might have triggered something, activated the architects. Instead, they wanted to limit you, keep you small, make sure you never found the seed ships, never discovered what you really are. Sat back, his mind racing. Everything he had been taught about history, about humanity's place in the galaxy, was a lie. They were not just another species struggling to survive. They were inheritors of something vast, something the most powerful civilization in the galaxy was desperate to suppress. "Why are you telling us this?" he asked. "The Dominion could kill you for this knowledge." Smiled sadly. "I'm an old man. I've spent my life collecting puzzle pieces that no one else cared about. I always knew I would never see the picture completed. But you," he looked at the Wanderer again, "you have the key. You can finish what I started." "What do we do now?" "The ship will guide you. It knows things I can only guess at. But I can tell you this much. You're not the only one. Other seed ships exist, scattered across the galaxy. Other humans are finding things, feeling things without understanding why. The architect's plan is finally waking up." Reached out and took's hand. Her grip was tight. "The Dominion will come for us." "They're already coming," said. "They've been preparing for this moment for longer than your species has existed. But they made one mistake. They underestimated humans. Everyone always does." He handed a data chip. "Everything I've found, every piece of evidence, every location I've identified where seed ships might be hidden, use it." Took the chip. It felt impossibly heavy in his hand. "I don't know if I can do this," he admitted. "I'm just a salvage operator. I'm nobody." Shook his head. "The architects could have made the ships respond to anyone. They chose to make them respond only to humans, to people exactly like you, ordinary people who would not seek power, who would use these gifts wisely. There's a reason you found that ship. There's a reason it chose you." Outside the viewport, the Wanderer waited patiently in the swirling colors of the nebula. A ship designed millions of years ago for a moment that was finally arriving. Stood up, his legs felt unsteady, but his voice was firm. "Then we better get started." He had come looking for answers. He had found something far more dangerous. He had found the truth. Now he had to decide what to do with it. Word spread faster than expected. The data had given them contained communication codes, secure channels used by humans who had always suspected something was wrong. Within weeks, this message reached hundreds of people. They were not soldiers or scientists. They were ordinary people, mechanics and pilots, traders and miners, people who had felt all their lives that humanity was meant for something more. And now they had proof. Some of them came to help. Tony Vance arrived first, a former military pilot who had turned to smuggling after the Dominion increased restrictions on human travel. He was loud, reckless, and exactly the kind of person you wanted flying beside you in a fight. Grant came next, an engineer who had served in the Human Defense Forces before quitting in disgust at how the government cooperated with Dominion demands. She was quiet and precise, and she understood weapons systems better than anyone had ever met. And himself insisted on joining them, despite his age. "I didn't spend 50 years collecting this information just to miss the ending," he said. They gathered at a remote point in space called the Helix Frontier, far from any colonies or stations. Had hoped they would have more time to plan, to prepare. They did not. 50 Dominion warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel around them. The sky filled with dark hulls and glowing weapons. At the center of the fleet, the largest cruiser bore the markings of Overseer himself. Stood on the bridge of the Wanderer, looking at the impossible odds on the. Behind him, and the others were silent. Tony Vance sat at a weapons console he barely understood. Grant monitored shields that operated on principles no human had ever seen. "This is Overseer of the Dominion Third Fleet," a voice crackled over the communication system. "You are surrounded. Surrender the vessel and yourselves, and you will be treated fairly." Laughed. It was not a happy sound. We both know that's a lie. Human's voice was cold. You do not understand what you are dealing with. That ship is dangerous. The knowledge it contains could destabilize the entire galaxy. Give it up and we can avoid unnecessary death. The only thing destabilizing the galaxy is you, replied. The lies you've told, the truth you've buried, that ends today. He cut the communication and turned to his crew. Whatever happens next, I need you all to know something. I'm proud to stand with you. I'm proud to be human. Smiled despite the fear in her eyes. Just try not to get us killed. I'll do my best. The first shots came seconds later. Energy beams powerful enough to crack planets streaked toward the Wanderer from a dozen ships at once. The shield caught them all. That pale light that had protected them before now blazed like a small sun, absorbing every attack. The Wanderer did not shake. It did not waver. It stood firm against the fury of 50 warships. And then it responded. Felt the ship reach out through his mind, asking permission. He gave it. Light burst from the Wanderer in every direction. Not weapons fire, but something else. Signals, calls, messages sent to every corner of the galaxy on frequencies that had been silent for 2 million years. What's happening? Tony shouted from his station. It's waking them up, whispered. The other ships, the other caches, everything the architects left behind. Across the galaxy, on dead moons and abandoned worlds, buried under millions of years of dust and rock, things began to stir. Seed ships that had waited since before humanity's ancestors crawled from the sea. Defense systems designed to protect the inheritors from exactly this kind of threat. A network spanning 1,000 light years, all connected by technology that made Dominion science look like children's toys. The battle above the Helix frontier changed in an instant. Space itself seemed to tear open around the Dominion fleet. Ships emerged from impossible angles, appearing from nowhere, their hulls glowing with the same golden light as the Wanderer. Not many, not yet, but enough. Ancient vessels crewed by no one, operating on instinct and program, placing themselves between the Wanderer and its enemies. The Dominion ships began to fall back in confusion. Now we tell them the truth. He activated a broadcast on every frequency, in every language, across every communication network in the galaxy. His face appeared on screens from one end of known space to the other. In Dominion command centers and human colonies, in alien cities and lonely outposts, everyone heard the same message. My name is Cole. I am human, and I am here to tell you that everything you believe about us is a lie. He told them about the architects, about the seed ships, about humanity's true purpose. He shared research, the evidence that could not be. He explained what the Dominion had done and why. We are not a threat to you, he said as the battle raged around him. We were never meant to be conquerors or destroyers. The architects designed us to connect, to adapt, to bring different species together. That is our inheritance. That is what the Dominion has been afraid of all this time. The broadcast lasted only minutes, but its effect was immediate. Dominion ships began receiving conflicting orders. Some captains refused to fire on the Wanderer. Others turned on each other as old resentments and buried doubts suddenly rose to the surface. Overseer's cruiser pushed forward through the chaos, weapons blazing. The ancient ships moved to intercept but was determined. His vessel took hit after hit, shedding armor and venting atmosphere, but it kept coming. He's going to ram us, reported, her voice tight. Watched the cruiser approach. He could feel desperation through the void. A soldier who had served the Dominion his entire life, watching everything he believed in crumble in real time. Let him through, said quietly. What? Grabbed his arm. He'll destroy us. No, he won't. I understand him now. He needs to see. He needs to know. The shields parted just enough to let the damaged cruiser slide through. It crashed against the Wanderer's hull, metal screaming against ancient material. But the Wanderer held. It always held. Walked to the airlock where the two ships had connected. He opened the door. Overseer stood on the other side. He was tall, his body covered in wounds from the battle. His weapon was raised, pointed directly at its chest. "This changes nothing," said. His voice was rough with pain. "You think one broadcast will undo 100,000 years. The Dominion will survive. We will hunt you to the end of the galaxy." Did not raise his hands. He did not step back. He simply looked at the alien who had spent his whole life being afraid of what humanity might become. "You're right," he said calmly. "One broadcast doesn't change everything, but it's a start, and that's all we need, a start." The ship hummed around them. Golden light filled the corridor, and for the first time in his long life felt something other than duty. He felt doubt. The galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy fractured. In the weeks following its broadcast, the careful order that the Dominion had maintained for 100,000 years began to crack like ice under pressure. Some species sided with the Dominion completely. The core members, the ones who had known the truth from the beginning, gathered their fleets and prepared for what they called a war of survival. They painted humans as dangerous, as weapons designed by ancient beings to destroy the natural order. Fear was their greatest tool, and they used it well. But others listened to this message and felt something different. Species that had been conquered by the Dominion generations ago. Civilizations that had been absorbed, controlled, forced to serve a coalition they had never chosen to join. For them, the truth about humanity was not a threat. It was hope. And some simply wanted to know more. Scientists and historians who had always suspected that the official history was incomplete. Philosophers who wondered why the Dominion was so afraid of a small species confined to a few dozen worlds. The questions that had raised could not be ignored. In the midst of all this chaos, Cole found himself at the center of something he had never wanted. He was not a leader. He was not a politician or a general. He was just a man who had bought a strange ship at an auction and stumbled into the biggest secret in galactic history. But the galaxy did not care what he wanted. It needed someone to speak for humanity, and he was the one holding the microphone. The neutral station called Compass Point floated in the space between empires. It was ancient territory, recognized by every major power as a place where enemies could meet without weapons. Requested a meeting with Overseer, and to his surprise, the accepted. They sat across from each other in a small chamber with transparent walls looking out at the stars. No guards, no weapons, just two individuals who represented everything their peoples were supposed to be. "You could have killed me on the Wanderer," said. His wounds had been treated, but he still moved stiffly. "Why didn't you?" "Because killing you wouldn't have changed anything," replied. "The Dominion isn't one person. It's an idea, a fear that's been passed down for 100,000 years. You can't kill an idea with a weapon." Studied him with those alien eyes. "You speak like someone much older than you are." "I've learned a lot in the past few months." "What do you want, human? If you're expecting me to surrender to beg for peace, you don't understand the Dominion at all." Leaned forward. "I don't want surrender, I don't want war. I want something the Dominion never considered possible. I want partnership." Was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something that might have been exhaustion or might have been grief. "Partnership, between your species and mine, after everything we've done to you." "The architects didn't create humans to dominate," said. "They created us to connect, to adapt, to find common ground with beings completely different from ourselves. That's the whole point. That's what you were afraid of." "We were afraid because we thought you would replace us. And instead we want to join you, work with you, build something better than either of us could build alone." Paused. "The architects saw something in us, but they saw something in you too. Your species was one of their early creations. We're not so different, we're both their children." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You make it sound so simple." "It's not simple. It's the hardest thing either of our peoples has ever tried, but it's worth trying. The alternative is war. Endless war until one side or both are destroyed. Is that what you want for your people? They looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, fleets were gathering. Weapons were being prepared. The galaxy stood on the edge of a conflict that could burn for centuries. My entire life, said quietly, I have served the Dominion. I have believed in its mission. I have done terrible things in the name of protecting our civilization. He turned back to, but I have also seen what fear does, how it eats away at everything good until nothing is left but the need to survive. It doesn't have to be that way. No, perhaps it doesn't, stood slowly. I cannot promise you peace. I am one overseer among many. But I can promise you this, I will speak for you in the councils. I will tell them what I have seen. The human who had every reason to kill me, who chose to talk instead. Stood as well, that's all I can ask. They did not shake hands. They did not embrace. But something passed between them in that moment. The beginning of understanding. The first step on a road that neither of them could see the end of. 6 months later stood on the bridge of the Wanderer, watching a human colony ship make its first jump beyond the old borders. The restrictions were not entirely lifted. The Dominion had not collapsed, but cracks had appeared, and through those cracks, humanity was finally beginning to spread. The ship was no longer alone. A small fleet surrounded it now, a mix of awakened siege ships and human vessels crewed by volunteers. Tony Vance commanded one of the escort ships, his grin visible even across the communication screen. Grant had taken charge of a salvage operation to recover more ancient technology, spent his days cataloging everything, documenting the history that was being written before his eyes. And Marsh stood beside, as she always had. Think the architects knew it would end up like this? She asked, watching the colony ship disappear into the light of faster-than-light travel. Considered the question. He had spent months communing with the Wanderer, learning its secrets, understanding its purpose. The architects had planned for so many things, but he did not think they had planned for everything. I think they hoped, he said finally. They gave us the tools, they gave us the opportunity, but they left the choice to us. They always knew it had to be our choice. Nodded slowly. Free will, that's what they were really testing. Maybe, or maybe they just believed in us. Believed that when the time came, we would do the right thing. Did we? Looked out at the stars. The galaxy was vast and ancient and full of wonders he was only beginning to understand. There would be more challenges ahead. More battles, more negotiations, more moments when everything hung in the balance. The Dominion was not defeated. The universe was not safe. But for the first time in human history, the future was truly open. We're trying, he said. That's what matters, we're trying. The Wanderer hummed around them, warm and alive, a gift from beings who had vanished before the Earth was young. Somewhere across the stars, another seed ship was waking, responding to a human touch, ready to reveal its secrets. The inheritors were finally claiming their inheritance. Not through conquest, not through war, but through hope and courage and the simple belief that tomorrow could be better than today. Cole smiled. He was still just a salvage operator from the outer rim. He was still nobody special, but he had learned something in the past months that the Dominion had never understood. It did not take someone special to change the galaxy. It only took someone willing to try. The stars burned bright in the endless dark, and the Wanderer carried its crew forward into the unknown future. Behind them, the past. Ahead of them, everything else. This was only the beginning.